Coming up on CHGO Cubs, Shaq, Jake Arrieta, and me, how we're all connected. Plus, the big blue train is rolling into the station. Doot, doot. Dan Plesac joins us from MLB Network. And finally, a show so good, you'll write us a blank check. CHGO Cubs, next. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by Toyota. It is March 6th. It is sunny in the Windy City, and your Cubs are rolling in Cactus League action. Luke Stuckmeyer, Cody is down in Arizona. The big man, Patrick Norton, ready to fill in and do the beer bat chugs if he needs to.
Of course. Every win. And today's a win. Why? It's your birthday.
That's right. That's right. It is my birthday. Survived another one.
Am I allowed to sing happy birthday?
No, that's illegal on the internet. That's different. That's different. Joey running the ones and twos today for us with Sean hovering around the table a little bit, just kind of circling around.
Helicopter parent.
Dan Plesac, yes, he will be joining us. Happy birthday to Jake Arrieta. What do we all have in common? How are we all connected?
Tremendous athletes.
Well, similar physiques, as I said the other day. Some people connect Arrieta and I for the physiques. Shaq and I, born on exactly the same day in history. March 6th, 1972.
Wow. Look at you go.
And when I told him that once, he said, "What hospital?"
That's a better impression than Carm's Jordan.
Big Aristotle.
Yeah, that's great.
Some people thought separated at birth, but nope, not a lookalike. So, yeah, birthday. This is also the day, 1987, that the Cubs signed Andre Dawson with a blank check. A blank check. First of all, that will never, ever happen again. But that's what the Cubs should have done for Shohei Ohtani.
Well, actually, Luke, I think we have a Cubs historian on the podcast. Patrick
I don't
Norton
want to talk about it.
puts together our daily newsletter for CHGO, and he has a piece of forgotten Cubs lore for us.
Today, Patrick? What else happened today, March 6th?
What we found out is that not on March 6th, but on May 6th is the Kerry Wood 20 strikeout game.
You don't say.
During a normal course of a season when they're playing, it's typically going to be May. Of course, I put that in today's newsletter.
I'm supposed to be the old one around here.
The 27th anniversary. In fairness, I wasn't born.
In fairness, I ask you this question. Which would be more impressive, 20 strikeouts in a Cactus League game or 20 strikeouts in a regular season game?
That's a great question.
Boy, to stick around in a Cactus League game long enough to have 20 strikeouts,
yeah, it's
even more unlikely if he would have done it on March 6th.
That's Mike Quaddy managing the team again.
Yes, it wasn't today. Also, today is not Halloween or Thanksgiving.
No.
Just so you've got everything straight. So if you got that newsletter and you're like, what are these guys talking about? That's the guy.
My fault.
That's the guy.
Yep.
He's taking full accountability.
Can't win them all.
Man of integrity. All right.
Cody's fault. He's not here.
So we're going to get to Plesac in a little bit. I talked to him yesterday, recorded it, saved it for today's show because I wanted an easy show on my birthday, frankly. We're going to talk about that. I have a question for you, though. The Cubs are off to a 9-2 record right now.
Yep.
Norty, in Cactus League play. That is the best record in Major League Baseball this spring. Grapefruit League or Cactus League. Best record, they have it. Should we be buying more stock in the Cubs? I know spring training doesn't matter, but I'm saying the inside stuff that you're seeing, good at bats, the injuries haven't been to the injuries haven't been major, and they haven't been to, knock on wood, Tucker or Happ or Seiya or Arrieta or not Arrieta, Steele. See, now there's the old.
Kerry Wood Day.
It is Kerry Wood Day. Should we be buying more Cubs stock than we are?
Yeah, sure. The record doesn't matter, but as you're pointing out, dive into the record. Why are they performing well? They're not coming back late in games in the 8th inning when no one's left. When the David Bodys of the world get into the game, of course, David Bodie not here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But they're succeeding with the players that will be here on opening day, and that's a big thing when you look at how it's gone in the last few years, where you get a lot of slow starts from these players. And obviously it's going to be different when they get to Wrigley. And it's what's the temperature out today? It's 30 degrees out.
30-something.
It could theoretically be that on opening day at Wrigley on April 4th, Friday 120 Club.
Shout
nice
out.
Plug. Yeah. But so there are a lot of variables there. How can you not like what you've seen, though? And I think, yes, it's a good start. And yes, you buy stock in that.
You're right. It's better than the alternative, which is everybody looking terrible. Now, Kyle Tucker, I don't believe has a hit yet. But I'm also not worried about that. So I'm happy with the good starts, and I'm not worried about the one bad start in Cactus League action. That's
all you can do with spring training, unless, and Sean walked away, I think, but the White Sox started what? 0-7 to start the spring.
Is that what happened?
They were winless for a while.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's a time where, like, if the Cubs had started that way, you'd probably be a little bit more concerned. So, yeah, at the end of the day, come March, 16th, the spring record is washed. It's gone. But you also, it's not like you like winning. Greg Council's a winner.
I've heard a lot of people talking about the quality of at-bats that you're seeing. Like guys taking quality at-bats, and that is something that can carry over into a season, unlike results and, think guys work out. But when you see somebody with a good approach and taking good at-bats and the way they're going about it, that's something that maybe you can see carry over. Hello to everybody in the live YouTube chat, by the way. That's the best way to enjoy the CHGO experience. Make sure you subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page, and please give me a like on my birthday. I appreciate all the likes and kind words that are being said on there, including some that have said just thank you for showing up, because it wasn't easy to get out of bed.
Very big of you.
You know that when you're in your 20s, a lot of people celebrate their birthday by having shots in the morning, shots at breakfast, brunch with shots, right?
Yes.
I woke up this morning and I trimmed my nose hairs, my ear hairs, and my eyebrows.
And then you did shots.
And then I took an Advil. And here I am.
And now you're flying high. That Advil's kicking in.
And now I'm ready to go. I'm been reborn.
So espresso shots.
Yeah. And by the way, I did all those things with my readers on so I can get a closer look, Things start growing where they didn't used to.
Speaking of readers in spring, I saw my first clickbait article of should the Cubs be concerned that Kyle Tucker is 0 for 14 to start the spring.
Yes.
Spring training, spring is sprung.
That was also in my newsletter. It was not, but yeah.
Spring is sprung. I don't know if I buy a whole lot. Michael Busch, by the way, I believe is leading everybody in hitting in Major League Baseball this spring. 11 for 22. He's got that 3-run homer. Which do I think is more likely to carry over? I don't know. I buy stock in both. I think Busch is going to have a good season. Do I think he's a 30 home run guy like I've seen some people hoping? I don't know about that. I don't know if I can go that far. I have one more thing that might change your thought process on Gary saying, don't get too overhyped on this.
Too late.
And I saw somebody else in the chat pointing out that, hey, they should be the favorites to win the division. Let's not go anywhere beyond that. That's fair. But I was watching the clip from our friend of the show, John Morosi, on Twitter today, and they were talking about Sandy Alcantara and how he's had 3 spectacular spring starts coming off that Tommy John surgery. And he says Alcantara will be traded in July. Harold Reynolds says, no. He's not making it to opening day. He's looked so good in these 3 games that teams are going to just be they're going to want it for all season. And you can get him for, I believe, $17 million each of the next 2 years. Okay. Well, that if the Cubs were to get in on that and have to maybe move some things around. Now, if you were to add Sandy Alcantara to this Cubs rotation somehow, now I'm buying stock.
I think it would be great.
Now I'm buying stock.
I think it would be great if Jed looked at the record, looked at the standings in the Tribune, and saw 9-2 and said, "Well, we have to buy."
Well, you would think a team that maybe had an injury would go about doing it.
Sure.
But we've been saying all along, I'd love to see one more frontline starter. Now, Alcantara would definitely He would give you that. And if he's as good as he's looked this spring, man, oh man, $17 million for a season sounds like a pretty good deal. You paid Kyle Hendricks $16 last year, okay?
What are you – the question then becomes, and this is probably a larger discussion, what's that package look like? What are you pulling from the Major League roster?
Yeah, you're going to have to give up a lot to get it. You're going to have to give up a lot. But
and you're 9-2 right now.
Here's what I would say. I just don't think the Cubs are in that mix. I was going to ask, which do you think would make it more likely for the Cubs to be involved in that discussion? Right now, trading before opening day, as Harold Reynolds suggests, or trade deadline? I would say trade deadline is way more likely for the Cubs because some of the pieces that you might have to include in a deal, first of all, I don't think the Cubs want to push all of their chips in yet.
No.
They don't want to go all chips in just yet. They've shown us that. Not they have the room. They can do it. But Nico's hurt. Nico might be a guy that's involved in that deal. Owen Casey's a guy that could be involved in that deal. You're waiting to see how outfielders respond early in the spring, and the Marlins might also want to see that too. I would say Cubs in July is way more likely. If Alcantara is going before opening day, I'm skeptical that the Cubs would be involved.
Well, and think of it this way, too. Obviously, the price will be driven up by contenders in July, but you're also going to have a higher price now based on the fact that the Marlins would be giving him up for a full year.
Sure, but the Marlins also run the risk of a guy getting injured.
With an injury history, specifically.
Correct. Yes, Joey.
I was going to say one of the fulcrum points of this is Owen Casey and that core surgery, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he's one of the big pieces that you throw into every single trade, every single time you talk about a big-name pitcher in the Chicago Cubs. Obviously, that's something that leads itself a little bit more towards the deadline. But what I have liked and I have seen in the spring is some of these guys, we mentioned in Alcantara, a little production, a little performance, they carry that through. It continues to up the value of your assets moving forward and just puts yourself in a good position. That's what the Cubs need to be in July.
Boy, he'd make this team interesting.
He would.
He would make this team interesting because now you'd be looking at a pitching staff that might be able to someday handle some of those big-name teams we've talked about that are full of hitters and they're full of dangerous places in their lineup, and you say, I don't know. But when you start to slide guys, if you had three starters in a playoff series and it's Alcantara, Steele, Shota.
Better than Dylan Cease, better than the options that we've heard.
I'd feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
I'd feel pretty good about it. And Gary's right.
It's going to take a lot. Of course.
It is going to take a lot, and you're going to and some of the people that love the prospects are going to be unhappy with it. But
there's not a spot.
I would assume Cade Horton's in the mix or Ben Brown's in the mix. But if you're adding Sandy Alcantara to your team, it changes things. You have to accept that.
Yeah.
There's a downside slightly to everything. It's just like the Bears trading for Tune. Yeah, he's 32. I got it. He's 32, but he's the best guard at his position.
There are reasons why the team trading the player is
trading the player. That's right.
Yeah. It's not.
Well, the Marlins are also in
really
a get rid of now. The Marlins are not competing right now, so they might as well.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to talk about Ian Happ and his projections in a second because we know the Cubs must exceed projections all over the field for them to be as good as we hope they can be. And then the Big Blue Train, Dan Plesac, joining the show in just a bit. But first, a word from our sponsors. Hey, everybody, you're wondering, where's Cody? He's on his way to Phoenix right now to check out Cubs spring training, and he will be riding with Waymo when he gets there. Check out the future if you're heading out to the desert right now to check out a little spring baseball for the Cubs. Waymo was the first company to serve as a fully autonomous ride with no human behind the wheel. They did it in 2015. 150,000 trips per week across San Francisco, LA, and Phoenix right now. It's the future. Waymo has more than 40 million miles of real-world driving experience. That's enough to drive to the moon and back 80 times. Imagine that. Waymo's autonomous ride-hailing service consists entirely of all-electric Jaguar I-Pace vehicles, a zero-emission experience for our riders. If you're heading out to Arizona for spring training or maybe spring break, download the Waymo One app and get ready to experience the future. Hey guys, I told Cody, listen, don't forget your Lucy when you go down there. And he said, you're right. I need my 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco-free. He likes a little boost in the afternoon when he's doing his social media clips down there. Some people like it on the golf course. Cody likes it when he's doing his angry rants. Needs it. Lucy Breakers are nicotine pouches with an extra surprise. Each pouch holds a capsule that can be broken open to release an extra flavor and hydration. So set yourself up with a subscription and have Lucy delivered straight to your door. Let's level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/CHGO and use the promo code CHGO 2025. That's CHGO 2025 to get 20% off your first order. Lucy has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. Again, lucy.co and use the code CHGO 25 to get 20% off. Now here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine, and nicotine is an addictive chemical. Back on CHGO Cubs, presented by Toyota. We're talking Cubs baseball. What do you think of Cubs expectations and projections? Should we be exceeding our expectations because the Cubs are off to such a hot spring training start? Let's go to left field. We've kind of gone sporadically around the field and picked out guys. We talked about Bush. We've talked about PCA. We've talked about the catcher position where I think they really could exceed projections. We've talked about third base where whether it's, Justin Turner or if it's younger players, potentially two rookies there. What about Mr. Consistent, Ian Happ? I would argue that he's as consistent as they get on the Cubs team. Like, some people get angry at Ian Happ because they want him to be more. But I would argue that he's exactly what you see on the card. He's the same guy almost every year. He's up. It's strange because he's up and down throughout a season. He does ride some roller coasters, but he always seems to end up at almost the same place. So 2024, he hit 243, 86 RBI, 25 home runs, WRC plus of 122, and a 3.6 WAR. If I did it right, and Sean gets mad at me because sometimes I use the wrong stats, Zips on Fangraphs, I think that's the one Sean wants me to use. I don't know. Their projection is 249, so a slightly higher batting average, 5 less RBI, 3 less home runs, WRC plus drops from 122 to 120, and his WAR goes from 3.6 to 3.4. So again, he's 30 years old. This would be a fairly flat line.
Sure. If
you're looking at Ian Happ. And Gary Ross points out if you're signing Happ, you can't give him a no-trade clause. But when we ranked left fielders, Happ's up there. He's up on the list. He's in the top 10 for sure in the National League. He's high up the list. What were you telling me about home runs, Joey, for Ian Happ?
Pre-show we were just talking about Mr. Consistency, right, which can be a little boring for Cubs fans. But when you look at it, right now Ian Happ is 10 home runs shy of Chris Bryant. 160 home runs for Chris Bryant in a Cubs uniform, 150 for Ian Happ. And if he hits those 25 that he hit last year, he will pass Andre Dawson
in a Cubs
all-time Cubs uniform. Yeah, all-time Cubs uniform. Andre Dawson's at 174. Derek Lee's at 179. So don't look now. Ian Happ, Mr. Consistency, is slowly rising up the ranks of one of the better offensive players to ever play in a Cubs uniform.
Unless something crazy happens, he's going to pass Andre Dawson and Derek Lee for home runs in a Cubs uniform this season.
That says something.
Listen, I'm not saying he's better than either of those players, but you also have to appreciate sometimes what you have. And the deal isn't crazy that you have him on. And I know everybody wants to look for improvement, and I get that. And I know sometimes vanilla can be a little boring. But I would suggest that vanilla's only boring when the whole team is vanilla.
We're also talking about
sometimes chocolate custard is great with a little vanilla custard at Cop's Custard in Milwaukee. I'm just letting you know. Sometimes you mix the two, it's pretty good. If you have a superstar like Kyle Tucker, Ian Happ starts to look a little bit better. I think you're going to see that this season.
I think it's easy to forget, and you might disagree with this. Ian Happ is the best Cub post-World Series, right?
Mm.
Who are the other candidates for that? 2 seasons of Yu Darvish?
Yeah, it's Wilson's going to be gone for too long.
Exactly.
Justin Steele, but there have been injuries.
Yep.
Yeah, it's probably Happer.
And
probably Happer.
And I know that Gary said
most tenured Cub now
by far,
with Hendricks gone.
And I know that Gary said that you would sign him, but just not with a no trade. That I don't think that's how that negotiation works. Now that he's had the no trade, tough to yank that back.
Right.
Yeah.
EvilWax73 says Happ is a way more dependable and productive player than most fans give him credit for. I don't see what they're, again, I understand that people don't like the roller coaster ride, and maybe you don't like where they hit him sometimes. I agree he's not a 3-hitter, but he does pretty well at the top of the order. I don't mind him as a leadoff hitter. I really don't. And I agree with that statement. I think he's more productive and dependable than most people give him credit for. He is, like Dansby Swanson, because of the Cubs' lack of success, he has become one of those polarizing players. But that's in a vacuum of winning 83 games. And I think if you put him on the right team in the right lineup, lots of teams like to have Ian Happ. And I'm hoping that's the Cubs team you're looking at this season. Whether it's adding another bat to the team this year or whether it's just improvement from guys and adding Tucker to right field and moving Seiya to DH, I'm hoping the offense is going to look that much better this season.
Well, and he's also a player who I think takes a lot of grief for when he has a defensive miscue. It's glaring, sure. It always is in the outfield. But every time that the ball is hit to him, I'm not thinking, oh gosh, what can possibly go wrong with Ian Happ? He's a pretty surefire fielder, too.
Yeah,
he provides you a lot of value in the lineup, in the field, kind of everywhere that you look. Ian Happ is just an above average player that the Cubs need right now.
He's not PCA in center field, guys.
No.
He's played some center field. I understand that. He's in left field. Do you know how the reason he's won multiple Gold Gloves in a row is because guys in left field are usually terrible.
Yeah.
They're usually butchers with a glove on. They're usually, you put your slugger out there.
Yep.
And you usually put a Kyle Schwarber out there if that's who you have to put out there. And I get it, Schwarb's threw some guys out in left field, but Ian Happ is
incredibly accurate in left field, in my
better
opinion.
Defensive left fielder than Ian Happ. I'm not saying they made the right or wrong choice. I love Schwarber. I wish Kyle Schwarber was on this team.
Yep.
But as far as everyday player in left field, you can do a lot worse than Ian Happ out there. And so while I see those projections, and they go down slightly because this is year 30 for him, I also see a world where Ian Happ could exceed those projections just like Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins are hoping for. I could see him slightly going over 22. Like if it was 25 home runs, could I see Ian Happ hitting 30 this year, finally getting to 30 home runs? Absolutely I could, depending on where he ends up being in the lineup, depending on how the offense is working. There's pressure off, should be pressure off him to have to do everything for the offense, do more for the offense. He just needs to be Ian Happ. And you hope that Tucker and Turner and maybe a big season from Workman and or Shaw, those things start to take care of a healthy Dansby Swanson. some of the pressure comes off a guy that is considered one of your leaders in the clubhouse as well.
Well, and consider this too, because how many years ago was it that we'd look at a 249 batting average and say, this is awful. This is not cutting it.
Yeah.
And now 249 is,
especially for a leadoff guy.
Sure. It's acceptable. His on base percentage is always about 100 points higher. I don't have the exact number on that, but it always feels like that's what it is. He draws a crazy amount of walks. He's got a good eye at the plate, and it also, I think that's kind of what you're looking for in this day and age of baseball, for your leadoff hitter.
So the projection,
that's fine.
The Zips projection is 3.4 F-WAR, 0.2 behind what he was last year. WRC plus down from 122 to 120, the 25 homers to 22 homers. If you were wagering today, would you take the over or the under on his projections for this year?
I take the over right now. How many times did we hear at the end of the last season how much the weather impacted the bats at Wrigley Field?
Oh, you're buying in on the old weather thing, huh?
I buy in on the weather thing every day.
Well, I will say I walked into the wind last night as the snow was starting to fly, and I thought to myself, Wrigley Field. Maybe they got something there.
Thank God for those nose hairs, though. Just protected you.
Well, at that time, I hadn't trimmed them, but then they started icing up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
But that's the thing with Ian Happ, though, right? Is that he has such an interesting story, in my opinion, in terms of his Cubs tenure with the guy that came up. He was a high draft pick, and they had to send him down to the minors and remake his swing. A lot of guys do not come back from that. Not only did he come back from that, but now we're talking about him as one of the most consistent Cubs that we've seen at least over the last 10 years, and we'll see where he ends up, maybe the 21st century. So I am going to bet on him going over his numbers. And I don't know if he'll ever be the guy that hits 35 home runs in a year, but he's got that high floor, right? And I'm not mad to say I think the ceiling could be a little bit higher.
Agreed. I would say if I was wagering money today, let's say I took all my birthday money and I put it down on over or under for Happ's current projections from Fangraphs, I would take the over. I just wouldn't be expecting it to be way over the projection because he's shown you he's kind of that guy. I just think it's possible that at age 30, he actually has his best season this year.
He's one of those guys who he could have 20 home runs on September 1st and not hit 22, or he could have 13 on September 1st and hit 23.
I still think his arc could be going up. I don't think the old age dip is starting to come yet. No. I think he can be that guy that wins another Gold Glove and gives you some really important at-bats throughout the season. I'm fine with what he is. I would take the over. Just not that much. Just not that much. I think Ian Happ, I'm trying to think of a player that's been here that long and really kind of takes a lot of heat on social media. Now, again, if you go back too far, social media doesn't exist, but I can't think of a player like that. Dansby's the closest thing to it, but Happ's been more consistent than even Dansby has, obviously.
Sure. Because he takes days off.
I don't know who that guy would be. By the way, when he went down to the minors again, everything I heard, and I've never asked him this, everything I heard was he was furious. Mm-hmm. And when he was down there, he was furious that he was down there. But eventually, he obviously accepted it and worked his way back, and you can't say it didn't work.
Who was it? Tommy LaStella who refused to go to Iowa?
Yes.
Yeah, just went home to New Jersey.
Yes, Mr. Mohawk Timmy. Happ is a solid player, very streaky at times. The thing is, I don't understand the streakiness as much just because he's not this huge home run hitter, and a lot of times that's where the streaky guys come from. Happ's way more consistent at the plate, but you're right, still goes through the slumps, which I can't explain. All right, the Big Blue Train's coming up in just a second, but first, a word from our sponsors again. The Chicago winter can be brutal, but Toyota helps make it easier. By the way, spring is just as bad here. Toyota's got 25 vehicles Available with all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. They have more than any other auto brand out there. Nobody matches Toyota. From the sleek Camry all-wheel drive to the Corolla's hybrid all-wheel drive. Then you have the Toyota Tundra. That's the truck known for power, durability, and off-road capabilities, perfect for our Chicago winters and springs. Headed to the big game? Maybe you've got to pile all the kids into the car, head to the vehicle, and go for spring break. Got to load up all that stuff, drive through some questionable weather to get there? The Grand Highlander is perfect. It's the perfect ride with all-wheel drive to keep you and yours safe. More than any other auto brand. So you bring the action, they'll bring the traction. Toyota, let's go places. And make sure, by the way, if you haven't hit the like button yet, go ahead and do it. And then when you're done with that during this ad read, make sure you sign up to be a diehard. Great time to do it. Access our exclusive written content, free t-shirt, plenty of discounts. You get our newsletters, sometimes factual, sometimes not. It doesn't matter. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
No.
Right? We accept and acknowledge any mistake that's been made there. Go to allchgo.com for the latest information on how you can join thousands of CHGO diehards in our communities. Join up with the rest of the sickos. We can't wait to connect with you on an even greater level.
Let me tell you about Game Time.
Please do.
Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. I am going to a Blackhawks game, March 23rd. They're playing the Flyers. 2
Credit
p.m.
to you.
Yeah.
Are you sure it's that? You sure it's that date? You've been having.
It might
some
be May 23rd.
Okay, I'm checking.
I'm going to a Hawks game in the middle of the offseason.
I'm doing this because I'm your friend.
Thank you. It's Jonathan Taves' birthday. Oh, no.
I will be taking my nephew. It is his first hockey game.
Oh, wow.
I am using Game Time Picks, and let me tell you why. Because when I am looking for a ticket, there is nothing worse than finding a price that you love and then being bombarded with fees right at the end.
Big time.
Game
Bait and
Time,
switch.
Game Time, it's the worst. Game Time will show you the all-in price. So I will be sitting on the 200 level. Come say hi. Don't do that. But let me tell you also, something that I love about the Game Time app, it's easy interface. You can navigate through seat options and find exactly what you need. Game Time also allows you to see a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find something better elsewhere. And then for Game Time ticket coverage, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. I have used other apps before and not gotten my ticket by the time that the game started. That was a bummer.
It's a big bummer.
Yeah, that's not how that's supposed to work. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Game Time. Woo, woo, woo. All right. So we're talking Cubs baseball. On March 6th, we wanted a national perspective on the Cubs from a guy who knows baseball and the Cubs. So yesterday, I called up a familiar face on the Hooters Hot Wings hotline. All right, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Some call him DJ Dan. I'll always call him the conductor. Our very own Dan Plesac. My buddy from a long time ago, and he still gives us time. He always remembers us. And Dan, first of all, thanks for coming on. I saw you and Sierra Santos co-hosting at MLB Network, and I tweeted out, I said, I used to park their cars. I knew them when I used to park their cars, but it's not true, Dan. What I really used to do was order your Chinese food.
God, isn't that you, Choi? Remember that? Vegetable fried rice. 2 vegetable fried rice. I would get stuff all over the floor. I would eat peanuts and they would be on the floor. And yeah, boy, those were the days. And you know, to this day, Luke, I still get mail at MLB Network from Cub fans. That was probably the most fun I've ever had, we were lucky the last couple of years. They were really good, man. Aramis Ramirez and DeRosa and Zambrano, they were colorful. They were fun. The Go Cubs Go thing just started after the game, singing that song. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, I think back now, like this is my 17th year at MLB. Wow. And it's like, where does time go? And it seems like if you had asked me, I've been here like 4 years and I still feel part of, that whole Chicago thing. Like, listen, I'm out here on the East Coast, but there's always a part of me that's Midwest, that's Chicago, everything Cubs, Bulls, Blackhawks, you name it. White Sox. I mean, it's just, I am what I am. And, but we had a lot of fun. And I will tell you this, Sierra's been there a few years now, and we did an MLB Tonight. She's gotten so good, Luke. I mean, she knows the verbiage, very composed. Man, I felt like I was working with Luke from the old days where, man, you just pointed me and shoot. Like you handled the rundown, you did the blocks, and you're like, bang, you would just point me and tell me what to do. She's really good, and she does a lot of things. She does baseball. They have her doing stuff on the NHL network. She's kind of a jack of all trades, and I'm telling you what, she's getting really good at all of them too, Luke.
Yeah, you guys are big shots. That's the bottom line. You're big shots, and everybody's happy to see the success out there. Okay, let's talk a little Cubs baseball. I have some questions. First of all, last year we spent all this time on the CHGO Cubs podcast saying they have good players. There are good players on the roster, but they have no superstar. They have no superstar in the lineup that anybody says we have to pitch around this guy in the series. That player is not going to beat us. Well, they didn't go get Juan Soto like I wanted. And a couple years ago, they didn't go get Aaron Judge like I wanted. But they did go get Kyle Tucker in a trade. Now, it might be for 1 year, but Dan, what difference could Kyle Tucker make in this Cubs lineup this year?
All the difference in the world. I mean, you look at all different metrics, and I buy into some of it. I buy into a lot of it. And you have to when you're looking at players today, like WAR and user rating, defensive runs, and all that stuff. You could look at a myriad of things that tell you a guy's a good player or a bad player. But I do know this. I had a really long conversation playing golf about a month ago with Mark DeRosa, and he managed him on the World Baseball Classic team. And he just said he's a guy that doesn't get a whole lot of attention because that was a team filled with superstars. And with the Astros, when you've got Yordan Alvarez, you had, Altuve, you've got so many big names that he kind of quietly just kind of he to me with the Astros was what Ryne Sandberg was to the Cubs. Like Ryne Sandberg, everyone in the Chicago area knew how great he was, but he really didn't get the recognition till the home run games against the Cardinals when he took Bruce Sutter deep twice on national TV that America was like, wow, this guy's a good player. Kyle Tucker's the real thing, man. He can defend. He can throw. He runs the bases well. A lot of pop. He has good power to the opposite field. So days when the wind there is blowing in a little bit from right and out to left, he can hit the ball in the seats out in left field. I'd be very surprised, Luke, if he doesn't have a 30-plus, 100-plus RBI, and the average will be up there too. He's not one of these 30 home run, 110 RBI guys that's going to hit 235. Like he's going to hit 275, 280. When he's playing well, he handles left-handed pitching. They've allowed him to get over that hump in a day and age where you're already pigeonholed into, well, you're looking at matchups all the time. He's a guy you're going to run out there, and I expect him to have a big year. My fear is, you see this a lot now. These contracts are crazy. You look at what Bregman knocked out $40 million a year for 3 years with the Red Sox. I hope the Cubs can lock him up because guys like Tucker, there aren't a lot of them out there. I hope his experience is good. I know that the people in Chicago, the Cub fans, are going to love having him there. He's not really, from a media standpoint, a way outgoing, crazy, nutty guy. I mean, guys, love him on the team. I talked to in Houston. All the guys like him. He's not going to be maybe the greatest soundbite after a game every day, but he's a real good player, Luke. And I'm crossing my fingers that he enjoys the experience early on. They're playing well, and he decides to stay because he's the kind of guy that he's at that right age right now that he's got 5 to 8 really good, like marquee, big time years. He's just starting to figure out what he is.
So Dan, that's the question everybody wants to know. Like, we're excited that he's here, but is it a one and done, right? What's the national impression? Like at MLB Network, you guys are sitting around or you're out on the golf course with somebody. What's the national impression of the Cubs? Because here there's a segment of fans that are saying, yeah, you're outspending the rest of the division, but you're not spending enough to be the Chicago Cubs. Ken Rosenthal's been very critical of the Cubs not getting the Bregman deal done, not going and getting the extra guy to go with Tucker. And do you think that's fair? Do you believe that the Cubs should be spending more than maybe they are right now in order to really compete with the Dodgers, the Mets, the Braves, and the other teams that they're going to have to really compete with?
I will say this. No, until they acquire Presley. He's going to be a big help at the back end of the bullpen. Listen, we can debate the lineup, the rotation. You know, if Imanaga is what he was last year, Tyone bounces back, and you know he's shown flashes of being a really good, dependable, reliable starter. Let's just say that the bullpen, the starting rotation holds its end up. And if you look the last 2 seasons, the bullpen has let them down, and it's not because like it's been a kind of an overworked bullpen. They haven't had a lot of choices, and they're looking for that one guy, you know, to man that thing down and hold it down. And I'm thinking Presley's going to be that guy. He's pitched in big situations. He's pitched in the postseason with the Astros quite a bit. I don't think he's going to be shocked like going to a market like Chicago. And, you know, it's going to be imperative that he gets off to a good start like anybody going to a new team. I think, Luke, if the bullpen is good, doesn't have to be great. If the bullpen is good, I think this division is going to come down to the Cubs and the Reds. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how the Brewers are going to do without Willie Adames. I know they seem to think. I like the move them signing Quintana yesterday. That was a big move for the Brewers. But I'm just buying the Cubs and the Reds. If I'm a Cub fan right now, I'm a little more worried about the Reds than I am the Brewers. You've got the Terry Francona factor. You've got some upgrades to the pitching staff that the Reds have done. They're going to have McClain back in the lineup, who was on the IL last year, a really good player. That's the team that scares me. I think the 3 teams, the Pirates will probably be in it early in April and May because of that pitching. Yeah. But I just don't think they can hit enough when the season starts to keep that really good, solid pitching in order. I think it's going to come down to the Cubs and the Reds. And I think whatever team holds up the best health-wise will end up winning the Central.
You mentioned Presley and what a difference. Yeah, obviously the bullpen was a massive problem. They had like 26 blown saves last year. Presley is 36. You have Brazier, who's also, past his prime for sure. You have Eli Morgan that's been added. So they added these veteran guys. What's the hardest part? You spent 18 years in the big leagues, so you found a way to extend your career and still be successful even after you hit 30 years old, right? So right. What's the most critical thing for these guys to do? How can they stay the Presley of old this season for the Cubs? How do you extend your career once you hit 30 and you're a guy in the bullpen?
The 5 guys in the starting rotation, Luke. You have to have good starters so that you don't have to go to your go-to guys all the time in April and May. You pay the price for it in August and September. And you look at all the teams last year. I thought the Phillies were the one team that could beat the Dodgers. Their bullpen held up for most of the year. And when they needed it most, game 1 of that series against the Mets, they had 2 guys that were on the all-star team, and they hand over a lead, and all of a sudden that lead evaporated, and the Phillies that looked like they were bulletproof, all of a sudden, oh my God, here it goes, rearing its head again. The best defense for a good bullpen is a good starting rotation that eats up innings, because all of those outings in April and May, you come out of spring training, everybody feels good, you're not sore yet, your body's bouncing back. The manager's not going to, you're playing your cold weather. You get a guy up one or two times. You maybe not want to use him the next day. But if you have to go to one or two guys in April and May and you lean on those guys all season long, you pay the price for it in July and August. I will say this. If the Cubs rotation does what they expect it to do, you'll have a good bullpen. You show me a good starting rotation, I'll show you a good bullpen. You show me a starting rotation that doesn't cover enough innings, I'll show you a good bullpen for 4 months that turns out to be an overworked, and then it's easy to throw darts at that bullpen when you're like, my God, he was so good in July. What happened to him? He can't pitch down the stretch most of the time. And you look what happened in the postseason, the Yankees series against the Guardians, their bullpen was locked down. Clase was tired. Cade Smith was tired. Luke Weaver was tired. Blake Trinan was tired. And all of a sudden, these guys that looked so good were like, okay, we'll take a deep breath. We got the lead. All of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. You're like, uh-oh, where do we go now? And then when those marquee guys, those guys you count on, aren't doing the job, then you've got to go to somebody that's pitched the 6th and the 7th. And now you're asking him to pitch the 9th. And you don't have any insurance to cover the 5th and 6th because you've taken that guy that's gotten big outs for you in the 5th and 6th, but you've got to hang on to him because the other guys aren't pitching well. And then you lose a game in the 6th and 7th because you took a strength and you moved it away. So show me a good starting rotation. I'll show you a good bullpen.
But Dan, here's the problem. Nobody's throwing 200 innings anymore. It almost rarely happens in Major League Baseball. Like the list is like a handful of guys this year. So do you think it's harder to be that veteran reliever now than maybe it was even when you were pitching?
Yes.
Because they're relied on so much more because the starters are only going 4 or 5, 2 times through the rotation, 2 times through the lineup, and guys don't want to see him a third time. Is it harder now than it used to be?
Yes, it's harder now. And especially in the day and age that we're living in now with baseball, it's grip it, rip it, and let it fly. You very rarely see guys out of the bullpen that are sinker slider. Everyone's chasing the same 2 things. They're chasing velo, they're chasing spin rate. And when you chase those 2 things, something eventually has to give. And normally it's your health, and you start spraying the ball, you start being inconsistent in the strike zone. And listen, I get it. The metrics, the numbers, the data, all the stuff, it comes into play. But teams are asking these guys, and it starts with the starters. Hey, give us all you have, empty out the tank, and we'll figure out innings 6 through 9. Well, when you do that, and you do that in April and May, and then it's easy to start picking apart your bullpen, but that bullpen that's worked hard, that's been overworked. I feel like this, man. As a manager, the toughest thing to do managing a game is you map out before a game. Hey, these are the matchups. These are the guys in the bullpen. You look at, say you're playing the Phillies, and you want to make sure that you save one good lefty in case you have to go through Harper, you have to go through Schwarber, and you have to go through Stott. So you really don't want to use that ace of spade in the 7th if you can hold him off to the 8th, or maybe you might need him in the 9th. And I think the managers that do it the best are the guys that you have to resist the temptation to keep going to the well to the guys that are doing it. And it's hard to do that you sacrifice a game or 2 in April and May for the well-being of the bullpen and the guy's health in August and September. But sometimes you have to do it. But as a fan and as an analyst, I look at it, I'm like, man, get somebody up. What are you doing? Like, this is starting to spin out of control, but I'm not following that team every day and knowing that guy pitched 2 out of 3 days, and the day that he didn't pitch, he was up twice. So basically, he's pitched 3 days in a row. You got to give that guy a blow. You got to give him a breather, and that's why I think it's going to be important. And Craig Counsell likes to use that bullpen. I mean, when he was with Milwaukee, he was like, hey, we don't have designated roles. He came up with that great slogan. We have outgetters. Like, and you better be. You might be in the 6th on Monday, but you might pitch the 8th on Tuesday, and you might be in the 4th on Wednesday if you're playing the Dodgers and you score 4 runs early against Glasnow or Yamamoto. And like, man, you know what? Freeman and Betts and Ohtani are coming up in the 5th. you might have to try to win that game in the fifth and use one of your leverage guys in the fifth or sixth. You can't worry about the eighth because the damage is coming right in front of you. That's the hardest thing for a manager to do.
So the Cubs have sort of tried to go by numbers, right? Like they try to make these incremental improvements to their roster. You know, maybe Colin Ray can have a better season than Kyle Hendricks, or maybe it's Boyd has a slightly better season than Kyle Hendricks. But they've got a lot of guys that can sort of do both, right? Like Javier Assad, when healthy, can start or he could be a reliever. Ben Brown could be a starter. We don't know this year, or he could be a reliever. Colin Ray could start or he could be a reliever. Jordan Wicks could start or be a reliever. What's the hardest part about that role? Specifically like Assad and those guys. Like, what's the hardest part of walking that fine line between being a starter but also being ready to be a key piece of the bullpen if you're needed?
First of all, you have to accept that role. And it's a hard thing to accept that one day, listen, everybody has their opinions on things. I think the best two jobs in the pitching department in baseball are a starting pitcher. You know what your routine is. So if you're having a little trouble, you know, with your breaking ball or your arm side fastball, you can work on it on the side. The other guy that gets special treatment is the ninth inning guy. Very rarely do you get those guys up twice and not get them in. The call goes down, Presley gets up, boom. Unless it's a 3-run lead in the eighth inning, you add on and score 5 runs, sit them down, say, hey, don't get hot, let's play it by ear. If we score a run or two, and then you can tell. And to me, the hardest part is your body gets adjusted to, okay, I'm starting. And then all of a sudden now you turn into this, it's like a fire alarm, man. All of a sudden you're sitting in that bullpen and that phone rings and all of a sudden it's get up, get hot, get in there fast. The biggest issue that I found is when you're struggling in the bullpen, it's hard to straighten it out because of this. You only have so many bullets. And let's just say you're struggling on Monday, you pitched 2 days in a row, and on Tuesday, you really want to work on your breaking ball a little bit. You want to go on the side and you want to throw before the game and you just want to spin a few to get that feel back. You got to be really careful that you don't spend too much time doing that because you might pitch 3 hours later. If you're trying to work on something and you're a starter, and say if you're Glass now and you're having trouble like with a curveball, he could take a day off after he pitches, play catch, and then on the third day, go down with the pitching coach and say, hey, I want to work today, not mechanics. I just want to work. I want to get that feel of the breaking ball back. And you do it without worrying you're not going to pitch 3 hours later. So you can throw, if you want, it's 8 minutes, it's 12 minutes, it's 15. However your arm feels, you can work on it. You can't do that in the bullpen because as soon as you have a day where you haven't pitched in 2 days and you're like, man, you know what? I want to have a good side session. And you throw and you're working on something. You're like, boy, that felt really good. And the pitching bullpen coach is like, hey, you know, save it. And inevitably what happens the next day, the starter's out in the third inning. You're like, oh, we've got to cover 5 innings. I'm not going to go 1 inning today. I might have to go 2. And I might have left it in the bullpen yesterday working on that breaking ball. So it's hard. It's hard to right the ship in the bullpen when you're a high leverage guy because you don't want to waste them during the day because you're going to need them at night.
All right, before we cut you loose, I do want to ask you, I want to go all the way back to the beginning of this interview and we talked about the star player, right? Kyle, let me give you these names. Kyle Tucker, Shota Imanaga, Justin Steele, Matt Shaw, the rookie potentially playing a lot of third base. Could the Cubs this season have either an MVP, a Cy Young, or a Rookie of the Year?
Very easily, yes. I was blown away how Imanaga took to lifestyle and pitching at the big league level. The concern with him was, you know, didn't have as much swing and miss as Yamamoto, Yu Darvish, Hideo Nomo, the guys that have come from Japan that have had 5 pitches and they throw 100. Was he going to keep the ball in the ballpark, fly ball kind of pitcher? I mean, he's the real thing. And he had a little spurt there, post All-Star break. You're like, and then, man, he finished guns a-blazing. I think the key to the Cubs, I'm a huge Steele fan. I just am. I like everything about him. He's no nonsense. He's no BS. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He gets after it. He's added a couple of pitches there for a while. He was basically fastball slider. He's mixing the changeup, changing speeds, almost like a slurve, a little curveball that he's using. I watched him pitch the other day in the Cactus League. I liked what I saw. His body looks good. I think the key to the Cubs this year, if Steele stays healthy, he's going to give them a 1-2 punch with Imanaga. And I do think this, if this is one of those summers that it gets warm in May and the wind's blown out, Kyle Tucker could hit 40 home runs. And he's playing for the right team because the Cubs get a lot of national attention. And if he has one of those years we hit 40 and 125, you always got to worry about Ohtani. I mean, it's almost like he's already got the 2025. They've already started like engraving his first name, into the trophy again. But you could definitely make the case. Yes, and that's not like a far stretch. I mean, it'd be hard to win the MVP because of Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman.
Yeah,
but you could make a case. Yes, yeah, very, very much. It's not far fetched.
All right, real quick then, because you mentioned them, can anybody beat the Dodgers?
Yes. On paper right now, I think there's one team, if they played them in a 7-game series, that I would be like, hey, they can Philadelphia Phillies. I'm Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez. They acquired Luzardo from the Marlins with the Phillies. It's not about the lineup. It's not about the starting pitching. Is Romano going to handle that 9th inning? And Strom's a good lefty. It's going to be about the bullpen. And if the Phillies bullpen is good, I think on paper that's the one team right now that I think could beat the Dodgers. I'm not saying they will. Mm-hmm. Luke, I try to be honest and I try to be open and objective. The Dodgers just do everything right now. They have an embarrassment of riches where they can spend. And not only do they spend, they develop, they draft, and people want to go there, Luke. Players want to go there. They've created a culture that guys like it there, man. There was a time in Boston and New York, like, do you want to put up with the aggravation of that media? And, there's always something brewing with the Red Sox and the Yankees. There's always something off the field that creates some kind of controversy. And in LA, it's the Hollywood thing. But I'm going to tell you something. Dave Roberts and that ownership group, listen, it's easy for a fan to go, yeah, they spend $300 million. They go get everybody. But you know what they do, Luke? They put their money where their mouth is. They spend. Their fan base expects a lot. And you know what? They want to win. They want to win the whole thing. They don't want to win the West. And I'll say this, last year, that team last year showed me more because going into game 4, they were done. Like the Padres had him buried. Like, the stepchild that's been saying, we're going to knock you down. We got you. They had him and they didn't step on their neck. And I was not surprised that they beat the Yankees. I was surprised they did it in 4. That Dodger team, when you have Freeman and Mookie Betts, man, those are special players, Luke. Those guys are gritty. They play every day. They're good. They're flashy. They're Hollywood. But I'm going to tell you something. There's some backbone in L.A., and it's a real thing, Luke. They're good.
All right, speaking of good, Dan Plesac's always good. He's always great, and we always appreciate your time. Good luck on the golf course. How's it going? By the way, what are you shooting right now?
It's been going bad, Luke. I started last year. My handicap was 2.5, and it went up to 5 by the end of the year. I didn't play all that well in January in Florida. I will say this, when the season ended last year, on the last hole in the men's senior club championship, I quadruple bogeyed the first hole, and I told my caddy on the 18th hole, take them goddamn clubs, throw them in the pond, I'm done. It was the most frustrating year of golf in my life, and it wasn't much better in January, Luke. So I don't know what the hell I'm going to do this year, but I'm going to go down guns a-blazing.
Dan Plesac, MLB Network. He's been there like 17 years or something now. It's hard to believe time flies like that, but always good with his time. Said he'll come back on. I said, hey, man, let's do this like once a month, every other week maybe, huh? Get some updates on the teams. He runs the place there, or he should. By now, be running the place there. I think he's clearly optimistic about the Cubs, but I like getting that perspective because he's watching everybody in the Cactus League. It's one thing that he learned, I know, when he went there. He's told me many times, like when it was just us covering the Cubs games, all he had to do was watch some Cubs games. And his baseball knowledge takes over the rest.
I wish I had that.
As soon as he got to MLB Network, he needs to know every player, every team, what happened yesterday, what's happening today, and it's a totally different thing. So when he's talking about the Cubs, it's in the background of all the other teams, right?
Yep.
So good guy to have on, and we appreciate his time. So what do you think? What do you think? What should I do for my birthday the rest of the day?
Burger King it. Have it your way, man.
Burger King, have it. They're not a sponsor. No.
No free ads.
No.
Quick question. Have you ever thrown your clubs golfing?
Have I ever thrown my clubs? No. Maybe once playfully or something. First of all, my clubs were like, the clubs that I own, it was like $100 for a whole set of clubs.
Wooden?
I have used a wooden club.
I have a set.
Absolutely. My first set of clubs were like my grandfather's throwaways, so they were old wooden clubs.
Sure.
Literally.
Yeah.
My grandpa just gave me a set of clubs that he got for his 23rd birthday. He turns 90 this year.
Yeah.
He used them for golf lessons and never used them again.
Interesting. Clubs don't make the difference.
No.
By the way.
It's all the player.
I mean, in that case, yes. Today's clubs versus old clubs, yes. But I'm terrible anyways. I'm like I'm at 100 or above every time.
Fair enough.
But never taken a lesson, you know? Maybe that's what I do this year. Maybe that's my birthday wish. Learn how to play golf. Don't have the time or the money. Anything else I could do?
I mean, what can you do? I mean, what can the people do for Luke?
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I would like for my birthday, and I've said this many times.
What could the Cubs get you for
shorter games?
There you go.
2.5 hours every game.
In and out.
I'll tell you what. Every year in my family, our birthdays, we do happy birthday. We then do another birthday song, and then we do for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, which nobody can deny, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow.
Which nobody can
deny. Happy birthday, Luke Stuckmeyer.
Thank you. Wow, that was something. I hope we don't get flagged for that. Thanks for checking out.
We cleared it.
Thanks for
We
checking
paid
out
the money.
the CHGO Cubs podcast presented by Toyota. Corey and Brendan at 1:30 tomorrow with the next podcast. Check out Cody's stuff coming out on social media on CHGO Cubs, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Cody's personal page. Follow them all. He's going to be sending in great stuff. Until next week, for me, thanks for watching Fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.